Bloomberg San Francisco stüdyolarından merhabalar. Ben Oğuzhan Aygören. Girişimcilik Dünyası özel bölümüyle bu hafta sizlerleyiz San Francisco stüdyolarında. Bugün çok heyecan verici bir konuğumuz var. Yapay zeka ve robotik konuşacağız kendisiyle. Çok heyecan verici bir startup'ın kurucusu ve CEO'su kendisi. Boris Sofman, ENG isimli şirketin kurucu ortağı. Boris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
It's good to see you here. Good to see you here. It's very exciting. Actually, we'll talk about robotics, AI today.
That's right.
Top of the edge technology. So, Boris, I would like to ask you. I would like to start with your background and the background of the company. So, how did it start?
So, the company is called ENG. It's a robotics company focused on consumer robotics applications. So, my background and my two co-founders, we came out of the Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon. So, my background is in autonomous vehicles. My co-founders worked on machine learning, walking robots, these types of technologies, and we got excited about how we can use this tech to reinvent categories of products that we interact with day to day. And so we started working on the company in 2010, starting with entertainment, but using our early products to develop a lot of the technologies that will move into smart home, deeper utility service, healthcare, and enterprise applications.
So what type of product is that? I think you have the product with you.
Yeah, this is Vector. He's our new character who's coming out this fall. It's a big evolution from some of our previous products that we've had previously. And what's unique about the robots that we make is that they're character-driven robots that have particular purposes and applications. And so what we do is we combine all of the traditional areas of AI and robotics, computer vision, path planning, manipulation, recognizing people, recognizing objects, but we combine that with an approach that is similar to what Pixar does to animate digital film characters. And so we actually have an animation studio inside the company that brings characters like this to life. And we combine that with the AI to make very interactive and rich experiences, some of which are focused for entertainment, some of which, like this one, start to move into home robotics.
So actually, AI is a very hot topic at the moment. So everyone is trying to integrate AI to all these products, and now you integrate it into the robotics part. So what does it mean to integrate AI into the robotics? So what has changed when we compare it to 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So there's a few big trends that have made a huge difference. One of the biggest is that the costs of the hardware, the computation, the sensors, the batteries, the motors, this used to be prohibitively expensive. Over the last 10 years, the path of mobile phones and smartphones has driven down the price points of these components by 100x in some cases, where now we can actually make robots for consumer applications at price points that would have been impossible previously. That's why when I was in graduate school, almost all applications of robotics were research or government or space or industrial. Now, this is a possibility. On the software side, there have been incredible advances in things like deep learning, which improve the degree to which you can understand the environment, cloud technologies for things like voice interface, the ability to interpret sensor data. These are the same trends that have now enabled autonomous driving, which used to be at a pure research phase, to start to become practical in both a technology and a price point standpoint.
So actually, in that sense, I mean, this is not the first product in the market. So there are like other robots, and you mentioned that. So they are so expensive. So what you are doing is you are making this technology accessible for everyone.
That's exactly right. It's instead of $1,000 or $20,000 robot, we're selling robots that are at $150 to $250 price points. And what that means is that the degree of utility and benefit that needs to provide is practical for what's possible today. And as the technology advances, the prices will go up, the capabilities will go up, and you'll see the improvements over time. And down the road, when you fast forward 10 years, you'll see incredibly advanced and very expensive systems that are as common as a family car, but the technology is not ready yet. And that's why this bottoms-up approach, where we started in toys and entertainment but are moving into up the stack into more advanced applications, that to us feels like the right way to approach this problem versus working on a research problem that's 20 years away and not being in a position to take advantage of new technologies along the way.
So actually, I would like to talk on this topic a little bit more because I mean, you mentioned that you have a vision in the longer term, like the autonomous vehicles. So you argue that you claim so AI will be everywhere, and you just say that you need to start somewhere, and that somewhere is like Pixar. What Pixar did from the toys industry for the entertainment.
That's right.
Can you walk us through this journey? So how do you think will this journey take place going through your vision?
Absolutely. So we call this the bottoms-up approach, and there's a lot of examples of this in different industries. So you look at the personal computer, you look at mobile smartphones. Apple didn't just come out with the iPhone. They had many, many iterations of it. Then before that, they had the iPod, iOS, a lot of the technical elements that went into it, and the learnings from the ecosystems that all combined. Same thing with the PC industry, same thing with the internet. All these things evolve from early stages and then get better and better and better based on the learnings and the feedback that you get from the market. There's too many companies that are thinking about robotics in terms of where it'll be in 15 years. And even though there's a lot of agreement that these are huge opportunities in home robotics and automation and all these different aspects, it's just not practical yet because either the algorithms or the prices or the consumer readiness doesn't allow it. And so for us, we saw an opportunity in the entertainment space with our early products to create a completely different type of experience that's driven by software instead of by just cheap plastics and motors. And even though our products are premium in terms of price, they're extremely premium in terms of the capability set, and the longevity of how people use them is far, far longer. And so for us, we started with a racing game called Overdrive. Our previous product is a little robot called Cosmo that's for mostly for kids, for playing, and also for educational applications. And that ended up actually being the #1 toy on Amazon in the US, UK, and France, because all of a sudden there was an ability to interact with a character in a way that you would never imagine possible outside of a movie. And it was bringing together all of these technical elements in order to make that possible. Through that product, we learned about character, personality, the role of eye contact, the role of facial detection. How do you express your emotions in a powerful fashion, but in a way that feels spontaneous all the time? And we developed a lot of these technologies that now, for the first time, make it possible for us to make a home robot that, unlike our previous products, which leverage mobile devices as the brains behind the experience, partly because of cost, now we've stuffed the equivalent of a smartphone inside of this guy's head, where he's able to be always on. He's connected to the cloud. There's a microphone array to where he can hear you. He can truly be alive. And it'll be the first time that there's a robot at massive quantities that actually lives with people in an always-on fashion.
So actually, it is the live version of C-3PO or R2-D2 in Star Wars. Can we say that?
It's a lot of our inspiration does come from characters like this, where you see like there's intentional limitations on them as robots, but there's such rich personality that makes you fall in love with what they're capable of. And even though for now we're still looking at this blend of kind of entertainment, companionship, and elements of home utility, all of this is foundations for applications in healthcare and home security and monitoring and deeper operations in both home and workplace, where if you have an advanced robot and it's large and it's moving around and it's meant to interact with you, if it doesn't feel like a natural experience to interact with that robot, it's going to make that technology impossible to adopt. And so the foundations of that, there's no company that we're aware of that's been able to actually collect experiences at a scale of millions of robots that can be now used to start tackling these applications.
So actually, when people previously, actually, when we ask people about what is the difference between human beings and robots, people say that okay, human beings have feelings, emotions, which AI and robot will not have. But in your example, we see that they have emotions too.
It's a key part of it. It's a really, really key part of it. Just like when you think about the personal computer, it really started to take off when there was a graphical interface that made it accessible for everybody. Robotics is the same. If you don't have the right interface, it'll be a prohibitively intimidating technology, and people will worry about intent, privacy, reliability, all these sort of aspects. personality doesn't just make it easier to interact with, it actually makes people more forgiving of any limitations. It communicates intent, it communicates a state, and it becomes a key element of it.
It builds trust, right?
It builds trust. That's a really great way of putting it. And a lot of companies think about AI, relatively few think about interface. Just like when we moved from desktop to mobile, everything about the interface had to get reinvented. When we moved from mobile and typical computing to interfacing with a mobile robot, it's an even bigger jump. And that's going to be a completely different type of experience on how you have to develop that from the ground up.
So you said an interface. It's all built on the user experience. How you develop the experience between the interface and the user. So people-machine interface.
That's right. Whether it's voice interface, physical mobility, making eye contact, conveying trust, as you said, all of these things become really critical capabilities.
So actually, we were talking to each other yesterday, and you were mentioning about this eye contact. Tell us, how does it work?
Yeah, well, this is fascinating. So each of our characters, we've had years and years of development process on our teams, thinking about the eyes, the voice, the personality, the emotions, and how these all come together in order to create this lifelike experience. Something like eye contact, you don't think about that in a movie because the characters just are what they are. It's a core part of us ingrained, down to our just most primal instincts. It's why we like to be in person versus on a phone. Eye contact for us, this was a surprising dimension. In our previous product, a key part of that experience was Cosmo recognizing people, looking them in the eyes, getting excited, saying their name when he knows them from before. And so we've done interesting experiments where we A/B test and we try to amplify the frequency of eye contact, and we play with the length of eye contact. And what we realized is that just by increasing the frequency and the length of eye contact, our engagement went up by over a third. So our play session went up from 29 minutes to 40 minutes, I believe. And so it's one of those magical moments that until you actually experience it and you actually have a little robot character make eye contact with you and get excited, it's hard to explain what that feels like. But the moment that happens, most people forget that they're interfacing with lines of software and a machine. They think that it's a character that's alive.
So people think that character as a friend, as a family member, or as a pet?
It's a mix of all three of those, and particularly with this one where the limitation of the previous one is because we relied on a mobile device. When the mobile device isn't there, the robot is off. It kills the fiction. With Vector, he is always on. He's meant to never turn off. He'll go back to his charger, sleep, recharge, come back out, get excited when he hears somebody come home. And so we actually use the pet analogy very frequently. Why do people get a dog? Why do people get a cat? It's about the warmth. It's about the companionship. It's about having excitement when somebody comes home. In the case of Vector, all of those elements with all these different dimensions that are enabled by robotics are possible. And then we go one step further and we start introducing elements of smart home and utility by wrapping a personality and a character around it, where instead of just a typical voice assistant, which has limitations because there's no understanding of the environment, Vector sees and understands the environment. He knows that you just came home. He may have a personal intent to tell you something or deliver a message. And because he's a character, he can actually get your attention and initiate that interaction in a way that a smart home speaker or device cannot. So all of these is a new paradigm, but at the core of it is this new type of interaction and companionship that is rooted in very much what makes a dog something that is special to all of us.
And at least it doesn't need any toilet or walking.
That's right. He will not pee on your carpet. He doesn't need to go to the vet. So I can guarantee that this is cheaper than a pet from that standpoint. But it's but for us, this is the roots. It's a lot of great technology started in the video game industry. That was the kind of catalyst for spin-offs. For us, entertainment and kind of derivatives of it, it's a way for us to experiment in a domain where people are forgiving and excited about the definition of what this means. And when we fast forward into the sort of applications that are much more serious and very utility driven, all these learnings enable us to carry it forward.
So actually there are 2 points here. One of them is actually you start with the pets and you are going through an autonomous feature. I mean, in that you are expanding to other fields as well. I mean, as you mentioned, the home autonomous systems, and there are so many competitors on that area, like Nest, Google, Apple. I mean, yesterday Apple announced the Apple Watch. So in the Apple Watch now you can have your EKG or other kinds of heart rates, etc. So there are so many things you are doing with your gadget. And you are entering into that field with a trustworthy friend.
That's right.
And on the other hand, actually, this is going to be a future where we will be dependent so much on those AI and autonomous robots. So we are giving all our health and future into the hands of this AI, whom we don't know who built that AI for good purposes or bad purposes. So there are various discussions going on in that purpose. So what is your stance on this discussion?
Yeah, it's the right question. And I think technology evolves from many different angles, and we intentionally try not to compete directly with established spaces because there's so much open territory that is enabled by robotics and mobility in the home that you cannot do with a static consumer electronic. We are trying to be very careful about privacy because these are the sort of things that people care about. There's more and more technology and sensing going into these products. And at the end of the day, trust for all of these companies becomes the #1 priority. And you see what happens to a company when the trust feels broken with its user base. My personal feeling is that AI and robotics, which is my definition of robotics is just a physical incarnation of AI and computer science, where you're manipulating the physical world and interacting in the physical world. It's going to be one of the gigantic transformative technologies of the next 10, 20 years. Similar to how the computer completely reinvented the way we interact with the world through digital means, robotics is the physical extension of that into the real world. We have to be careful because there's safety issues in things like autonomous driving. There's trust issues in things that have sensors, microphones, and cameras and so forth. But a lot of that can be, a lot of that is actually similar parallels to what we go through with privacy on computers and cameras and so forth in home environments. And part of that is enabled by having an interface where it's, like we talked about, it's clear what the intent is of that product. And one example is that if you're worried about all the sensing and capabilities of a robot, as a person, if somebody's in the room, you know they can see you and they can hear you, and if they're not in the room, they can't. Having a character makes this very logical and intuitive break where you don't have to worry about a static camera where you don't know if it's on or not, or if somebody's looking through it. These are the sort of things that adoption in the future will be a mix of companies behaving responsibly and an intuitive and natural interface that doesn't create a barrier that takes an extra 5-10 years for people to overcome.
I think behaving responsibly is the keyword here.
That's right.
Right. So, I mean, it's not the technology, it's the people who use and also who develop the technology. So, and it all depends on your intention.
And exactly. And what's the purpose of the company? So when you have a company whose core revenue is on advertising or data, the incentives aren't aligned. Apple behaves a lot better because their motivation is to sell you products that you love, and so they don't benefit by any sort of breach of trust. And so for us, we're in the same bucket where we want people to love our products and progress with the journey of new robots that we make, and we're not interested in monetizing on data or having a breach in privacy because our interests are aligned. I think the problems start to happen when the core incentives of the company are mismatching with consumers.
So, but actually, you got funding, more than $200 million from the big giant companies like Andreessen Horowitz, JP Morgan, in like 4 rounds. So, what does those big guys want? I mean, the VC companies. So, you say, what motivates you and what motivates them? Are they aligned, and how do they align?
Yeah, and for the most part, they're aligned, and we try to filter carefully when we have these conversations. But for us, when we started the company, we thought that this is the beginning of a gigantic trend in robotics that's going to start evolving incredibly quickly with advances in software and AI technology, advances in sensors and components, and we've seen that continue every year since we've started. We're just now starting to get to a point where all of these pieces are becoming enablers of more and more advanced applications that even 5 years earlier wouldn't have been possible. And so unlike some companies that build a vertical in a space, start to try to grow in it, and then they have an exit, for us, success is leveraging the foundation that's built in early products and building more and more of a base as we move forward to where we're in the best position to take on these more advanced applications. What that means is that we want to be in a position to feel like there's just as much space in front of us 10 years from now or 20 years from now as there is today. What we're finding is we need to get into more and more overlaps with the larger tech companies, and because there's integrations in technologies and integrations in markets. But we've always thought about building Anki from the ground up as a company that could be sustaining on its own and really grow in the space. There really isn't a company out there that you would think of as the robotics company or a consumer robotics company. It's something that is a foreign technology that isn't core to most other companies, and so it feels like a really great opportunity to us.
So actually, you mentioned about the base, the foundations of the company, and you say you will stick to that foundations as long as the company goes. So you are not interested in selling the company and go out of the business, and you would like to keep this space. So in that sense, I would like to go back to your foundation. So what motivated you at first? So you were a graduate student in computer engineering and then robotics PhD, and then you were a dropout in robotics PhD. So there are so many people out there, I mean, the engineers, electrical engineers or computer engineers watching here our program. So I mean, tell us about your motivations at that time, and also I would like to, I wonder your suggestions for the people, for the engineers who watch this program.
Great. So I actually ended up finishing the PhD, so we were working while we were in the PhD.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and so we were, it was actually a great place to start the company because we had the flexibility to work on, on what we needed to work on, but leverage learnings from the program itself. So graduate school was actually a good time to start a company from that standpoint. Our excitement was in this inflection point where there was all this incredible technology that just wasn't finding its way into products, and it felt like we were just starting to get to a point where the cost structures were becoming enablers of that to actually happen. I would say that there's a spectrum of classmates that we had where some people were really excited by the theory and the long-term foundation of research and the technology, even if it wasn't applicable. Our excitement was about actually having a large-scale impact on people within a reasonable amount of time. And so that naturally took us towards an entrepreneurship route where you effectively have to actually release products and release technology that people find value in. And that was aligned with our passion and our vision. And so we ended up, before then, all of us had worked at startups, kind of as employees or, kind of in small stints at one time or another. And we just got excited about this idea of not just the technology, but building the infrastructure around it to actually bring it to market and impact millions of people. That journey's taken longer than we ever thought when we first started. As most things, that's more complicated than you expect early on. But it's been exciting because every step of the way, the muscle of the company gets bigger and the opportunities open up that we never would have dreamed of earlier.
How long did it take for you from the inception of the idea to the first version of the product and to your first financing? Mm-hmm.
So we started working on what became the company in 2008 while in graduate school. We incorporated in 2010. And then we graduated in 2011. And so we moved to San Francisco. We'd raised a seed round in 2010, 2011, where we had a technology prototype of our early first product, this racing game Drive.
From your graduate studies?
From the graduate studies, that was the work that we were doing in parallel. And then when we moved out, we raised our Series A from Andreessen Horowitz, where we had a very robust demo that was alluding to what the product would be, but we were still a year and a half away from launching the product. And so we raised 2 rounds of funding before we actually launched our first product in 2013 in the fall. And then from there, we've been launching products every 1 to 2 years since then.
Okay, Boris, actually we are approaching the end of the show. Is there one final word that you would like to add or comment?
Yeah, I think the last thing I would say is that a lot of people have ideas of what a robot is. It's it has arms, it has this, it has that. To us, robotics is interesting because it's not its own category. It's not an industry. It's almost like a tool set that reinvents other spaces. And that's what's exciting, is that when you think about the tools that you employ to make a character, to understand the world around you, to plan a path, it's the exact same family of algorithms that you would use in transportation, in entertainment, in security, in healthcare, and in all these other areas. And that's the part that's exciting, is just like the internet reinvented almost every single sector, to us, this is the enabler for this next wave of innovation across all the different spaces that are out there.
Okay, Boris, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
It was a very exciting and great conversation.
Wonderful.
Thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Programımızın sonuna geldik. Bir sonraki Girişimcilik Dünyası programında görüşmek üzere. Hoşça kalın.